So desert dunes and coastal dunes can be different morphologically, that is, they can look different and be classified differently, but what makes them different ecologically? Like, how do the organisms here differ from the organisms here? Well, the key to all life on Earth is water, and one of these environments is really hurting for it. Desert plants are well adapted to extreme drought. Leaves are meant to absorb sunlight, but they're also an easy way for water to escape. Water can evaporate right out of the plant. This is why the leaves of desert plants have so many unique adaptations to drought. Many will have hairy leaves that diffuse radiation from the sun, or have thick waxy ones that are better at holding on to water, or just have no leaves at all. Water is the most precious resource for life, and in this kind of environment, you can't afford to waste any of it. So you know that because coastal dunes have so much of it, they're going to use it. Water here nourishes even the tiniest of life, interstitial fauna. These are living organisms hiding between sand grains. Things like bacteria and fungi call the sand in coastal dunes home, but are practically absent in the sand in desert dunes. And you may think that's kinda whatever, like, does having fungi here or there really make that big of a difference? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. Mycorrhizal fungi are a major reason that some plants can survive here. American beachgrass dominates the east coast of the US, and that's partly because of its symbiotic relationship with this type of fungus. The fungus in this relationship takes sugars and other organics from the grass. In exchange, it sticks to the roots of the beachgrass and extends its reach outward, almost like putting an extension tube onto your vacuum cleaner. Now, the plant can suck up water and nutrients from a greater distance. All the more reason to extend your reach out here in coastal dunes is that nutrients are in short supply. Coastal dunes are perpetually lacking nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Certain plants have adapted to handle these deficiencies, though. The roots of northern bayberry contain microorganisms that convert the nitrogen in the air, which is normally unusable to plants, into ammonia, the same stuff you can find in commercial fertilizers. The plants that have adaptations like this are a minority, though. A large portion of the nitrogen content that fuels life on coastal dunes comes from whatever the sea is willing to give up. Things like seaweed and dead animals wash up and decompose. Their dead remains then enrich the soil. But the sea giveth and the sea taketh away, because as much of a blessing as the water and the dead biomass that the ocean provides is, it also gives salt, and lots of it. Salt spray is something the plants here must constantly contend with. Too much of it in the soil can inhibit a plant's ability to take in water. That's why plants like beach rose have special adaptations to fight this. Mechanisms like increasing leaf thickness and excreting salt through salt glands helps plants fight salt spray. Ooh, say that 3 times really fast. It's difficult conditions like these that help drive organisms to adapt and to evolve. Harder environments push life to the brink, so it makes sense for a more extreme environment to support more endemism. For a species to be endemic to somewhere, it can occur only there. This happens when there are specific ecological niches that are looking to be filled. Unique environments will drive the creation of unique organisms. At this state park is the coral pink sand dunes tiger beetle, occurring here and literally nowhere else in the world. With a total range of a little over 1 square mile, this beetle has specifically evolved to live here and only here. You just don't find that kind of thing as often in coastal dunes. When a forest is so close inland, it just makes sense to move to greener pastures if you need to. Organisms that choose to stay on coastal dunes regardless don't experience the arid extremes of the desert. There just isn't a need to evolve and meet that level of stress. Or perhaps they just haven't had the time to do so. Desert dunes are ancient. Coastal dunes, on the other hand, are very geologically young. Changes in sea levels and climates have formed many of them only recently. Something that the two environments do have in common, though, is the extreme heat and sunlight that the organisms there must tolerate. Both on the coasts and in the deserts, sand is their savior. How exactly? Well, it's horrible at conducting heat. Measurements from one dune system showed that daytime surface level temps could get as high as 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Going just 2 inches below the surface, the temperature got as low as 79 degrees. Going about 3 feet under, the temperature dipped as low as 66 degrees. The difference at the surface is much less gradual. You don't need to go very deep. This is why so many animals hide underground in dune systems during the day and come out at night when temps are much cooler. The sand is a much needed shelter for these animals. Some of the plants, though, may not feel the same way. Being literally buried underneath sand is a real threat to much of the vegetation that grows here. Many coastal dune plants have adapted to this threat, though. Returning back to American beachgrass, it actually benefits from being partially buried. With more sand comes more nutrients, and as we've already learned, those are in short supply here. Beachgrass will take those extra nutrients and kickstart more growth in itself. Still, too much sand burial is a bad thing, even for beachgrass. The dangers from sand don't end there, though. Plants have to not only worry about drowning in sand, but also sand slipping out from right underneath them. Sand is not like dirt. The plants in your garden stay in one place because the soil stays in one place. Sand moves with the wind, so how do the plants in sand dunes make sure they stay put? Well, you can see for yourself here. Plants will send stems and rhizomes out of the sand and onto its surface to gain a stranglehold on it. If enough plants grab on, they can stop a dune from moving entirely. Other times, they're just along for the ride. They'll move with the dune. But other dangers still lie ahead. Because the plants and the dunes they sit on top of move with the wind, there really isn't anything keeping them in protected areas. Coastal dunes especially can move right into places where construction projects and people can just crush them into nothing. But dunes may also pose as much of a risk to us as we do to them. As global temperatures climb, the world's deserts expand, and so too do the areas filled with desert dunes. Dunes that were once stabilized by vegetation will begin moving onto agricultural land, highways, really anywhere that has people. It's estimated that by 2030, nearly 50 million people will be displaced by desertification. And this is especially concerning since we know so little about dunes. Hopefully we can continue to learn more about dunes so that we can protect them from us and us from them.